wasn't pretty, but the Lions claim a big scalp over a top four rival in a bruising encounter at the Gabba. The Swans win, but Buddy is overshadowed as his race for 1,000 goals continues and the reigning Premier picks up where it left off. Hello and welcome to the round so far, brought to you by Amy. I'm Riley Beveridge. This is Kane Corns, and Kane, we're back in the studio.
How good. So good to be back here in the big studio. Thrilled to have you on board, mate, as well.
You.
So you're going to dominate this and look forward to working with you throughout the season.
Can't wait. It's an absolute pleasure. We'll start at the Gabba, where Brisbane won for the 28th time in the last 32 encounters. They've beaten Port Adelaide 5 times in a row now by an average of 6 goals. They've done it again.
Yeah, it's been Port Adelaide's bogey side. They just haven't had success recently on that ground, and it's a real issue for them. Look, we think these two teams will be around the mark come finals time, and there wasn't a lot separating them in this game other than Brisbane's last quarter, where they were terrific. I thought they were much harder and cleaner around the footy. And I thought Port Adelaide overused the handball when they should have been forcing it forward in those conditions. But both sides at times struggled with the conditions. But as I said, Brisbane's midfield really lifted in that last quarter.
This is where the game was won, as you mentioned, in the last term. Do you think they overused it? Because they haven't won at the Gabba against Brisbane, the Power, since 2017. So it's a long time, and you're going to have to think these sides are going to meet again at the pointy end of September.
You would think so, wouldn't you? And that's why these games are so important. The errors from both sides. And we see Adams there dropping an easy, uncontested mark. Clearly the conditions were really tricky up there. Alir, like, how many times have you seen him do this in his career, the All-Australian last year? Just couldn't get up, couldn't regain his footing. But look at the cleanliness of Cockatoo there. And then he was just harder and lower. And that was systematic of the last quarter performance from the Lions. Once that crowd gets behind you, it's like a cauldron at the Gabba. Now, this man, Houston, was terrific for Port Adelaide. I thought he was the best player on the ground, and he kept the minute with just under 6 minutes to go there from a bomb outside 50. He played across the wing and on ball, the shift from half back to that position. But in the end, the centre bounce staff and the clearance work that Brisbane were able to do, and in big moments, their best players, including Lachie Neale and Charlie Cameron, was quiet, but they stood up when they were required to tonight.
We mentioned it off the top, but it was a bruising encounter. Trent McKenzie goes down with what looks like a serious knee injury. That was devastating for him because he's had a couple of really strong years. And then earlier on in the game, we see Xavier Dersma hurt what looks to be a collarbone. We're about to see the vision here in this incident with Mitch Robinson. Do you think Mitch Robinson has anything to worry about? Because you have to decipher whether or not it's a reportable offence before you get to the grading system.
Yeah, so here's the incident here. Now, you feel for Mitch Robinson because it's a football action in terms of there was no malice behind it. You've got a split second to make that decision, but because he's elected to bump or brace instead of trying to win the footy, I think he'll be in trouble. Now, the chart would say, as I read it, would say careless, high impact to the body, which is about 1 week. Now, he's fortunate that the contact was to the shoulder and not to the head of Xavier Dersma, but because he was injured significantly and subbed out of the game, I think he probably serves a 1 week suspension.
One to watch when the match review meets on Sunday morning. Dane Zorko subbed out for the Lions as well, looked to hurt his Achilles late in the game. So they could be without both Robinson and Zorko for next week's clash against the Bombers. We'll move to the Saturday Star now. We were waiting for someone at the Swans to kick 5 goals today. It just wasn't Luke Parker.
No, we thought it might be Buddy, and all the hype was around Buddy, but this man, Luke Parker, what a career he's forging. I mean, he won the best and fairest last year. He's re-signed a big contract that took a little bit longer than most of us would have thought. In the second quarter, he went to Green, so he sacrificed his own game after Green had 13 in the first quarter. The young star from the Giants did a pretty good job at nullifying him. They needed a spark forward. He went forward in the third term and kicked 3 and has ended up with 5 goals for the match. He's tough, he's clean, and he's versatile, and he's done it for a long period of time. And you see him there winning the Brett Kirk medal, his 4th. Like, it's a phenomenal record there. But they had some good players. Isaac Heaney kicked 3 as well. So they do have the flexibility of those midfielders to go inside but also rest forward and do some damage forward of the ball.
Ollie Florin, another one who kicked 3 goals. We'll move from the Saturday Star to maybe the Saturday villain, because Phil Davis played on Buddy Franklin, kept him without a possession to quarter time, kept him to 1 goal for the evening. He moves to 996.
Yeah, and his record against Buddy Franklin is really good for a long period of time. He's done some terrific jobs, probably the most success out of any defender on Buddy over the journey. Now, this is the 1 goal he got from a Ticky Touchwood free kick, it must be said. We don't celebrate defenders enough in this game. We need to celebrate performances like this, because with the new rules, with the inability to be able to make much contact with your forward, they're always going to get the free kick, as you're seeing there. Davis's job. Sydney have had 27 scoring shots, and a man who's kicked 996 goals has been held to 1 goal and 8 possessions. This is a Brownlow-worthy game from Phil Davis, and when some of us thought his career was probably on the decline, for him to get up and produce a performance like that was just stunning.
He was awesome. We'll move to the G now, where Geelong won by 66 points against Essendon. I guess the big story out of this one, though, is Jeremy Cameron. He's been talking all summer about how fit he's been. Early in the first quarter, he cops this knock from Jaden Laverde. Looks pretty harmful in the first instance. Geelong initially said it was a hip pointer, but he was taken to hospital later in the game, which suggests it might be a bit more serious than that.
Yeah, you'll see him go to hospital here. That's always concerning when you've got 4 ambulance staff around him and he's carted off to hospital to get checked out. Then it's got to be more than a hip pointer.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anyone gone to hospital with a hip pointer before. So hopefully the kidney rib area is okay, but clearly an abundance of caution. Luckily for the Cats, they didn't need him because the game was over at quarter time.
Well, he'd already kicked 2 goals to the point where he went off. You mentioned the game was over basically by quarter time. Patrick Dangerfield had a big say in that. 31 disposals, 8 clearances and a goal. He wins the Tom Wills Best on Ground award in the country game. Geelong smashed him out of the centre.
Yeah.
12-2 to half-time for centre clearances.
Yeah, and you look at the stats, and Essendon's midfielders win a lot of it. Merritt had high 30s, Parrish once again had high 30s, and others. But their lack of accountability on Geelong forwards and the ease of which they waltzed out the front of the stoppage, and Dangerfield was central to that. Now, he's coming off probably his most disappointing year because of injury and suspension last year where he missed 6 games, but he looks refreshed, and he doesn't get enough credit for that. Like, that is genuine courage in the air. He's an 8-time All-Australian and he's won this award today. If they can get a refreshed Patrick Dangerfield, heard Chris Scott speak on radio before the game. He said, look, we've got a lot of players that the opposition would love to have.
Yeah.
We're going to play to their strengths this year, and it feels like Hawkins and Cameron and Dangerfield and Selwood are revitalised by that.
Talking about playing to strengths, Geelong certainly played to Tyson Stengels early in this game. There was a couple of great recruiting stories in this. Tyson Stengel picked up as a DFA. And Nick Martin, a player that was picked up 24 days ago via SSP rules, he gets 5 goals from 27 disposals.
Well, it's crucial for players like Stengel for Geelong because they haven't had the draft picks, because they've given them up to top up and go all in. You can get a player like this for basically nothing and he produces 4 goals. And then this man, it's one of the best debuts of all time, like 27 and 5 goals. And as you mentioned, he wasn't on the list 24 days ago. Like, look at the ability there, the agility and the want and desire to be able to finish with speed, like as good as it gets. So where's he been? I don't know, but the Bombers might have found one, and he may have knocked off a famous name for the Rising Star. You would think he's going to be hard to beat for that nomination.
You're completely right. We'll get to the Amy Clangers now. Not that I can talk about haircuts, but there was a few questionable ones throughout the day. What about this from the boundary umpire? Thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I like it. A real thick sort of mullet, not just your thin mullet. And then Dangerfield was hot out there at the G. He'd done a lot of work in the first quarter. He was cooling off. And another stunning debut, Jack Hayes. And Don Pike here in the thick of it.
They put him at bat pad. You got to take that. Logan McDonald, dangerous with the bat. You got to take that.
Come on, Don. Disappointing.
Not good enough. Well, that were the Amy Clangers. We might have had the Amy Clanger of the year already, Kane. We've only had a handful of games. But Joe Danaher, leading into half-time, took one of the marks of the year and then followed it up by playing on right in the side.
I haven't seen anything like this. A key forward taking a screamer at the top of the goal square with 3 seconds, you see it there, and then handballing it off.
Why is he?
I don't know why he's handballing it, but that's the Joe experience, isn't it? He does a bit of that. He saw the humorous side to it, which I certainly wouldn't have, but that's Joe's nature. Credit to him, though. He dusted himself off at half-time. That was a really deflating moment in the course of the game, and he's probably been the match winner for Brisbane and was the most dangerous forward on the ground from either side with 4 goals. But you're right, no one's beating that for the Amy Clanger of the year.
Kicked 3 goals in the second half, back-to-back goals to start the final term, which brought them back from 15 points down. But Amy Clangers for Good is back for another year. Amy will be donating $10 for every Clanger registered during the 2020 season to help support local footy clubs who have been heavily impacted by bushfires, COVID and floods. Clubs can enter at afl.com.au/Clangers for Good. Move on to Wednesday night. Unusual time slot for the first game of the season, but Melbourne against the Bulldogs. It was a grand final rematch, and the Norm Smith medalist was on fire yet again.
He was. Eerily similar performance. So we've got exclusive behind the goals vision here. They've had 6 months to prepare for a man whose summer rating is the best player in the game, who's come off 39 and 2 goals in a grand final. And look at the lack of attention that he receives. And I'm not talking about a genuine tag. Is anyone laying a body on him? That's his forward 50. The most dangerous player on the ground. Not one Western Bulldogs player goes anywhere near him. Uncontested mark inside 50 early in the game, goes back and kicks a goal. We'll roll the vision again and once again. Just look at him waltz from contest to contest. Stoppage here. No body contact, let him go, he'll follow up, he'll win the ball, he'll just stroll down the ground with no one going anywhere near him, and then he'll lace out Ben Brown with a pass under no pressure. So I heard Stephen May speak after the game. He asked his opponent why no one's gone near him. He said, well, we don't tag. Well, you should tag Luke Beveridge. He should be worrying about that rather than other distractions, because you look at that performance, 6 months they had to prepare, and this is what he produced again. So I don't think Christian Petrarca will be allowed that space and that lack of respect from the opposition for the rest of the year.
They are eerily similar numbers to that 2021 grand final performance where he, of course, won the Norm Smith medal. Few worries for the Bulldogs out of their midfield. They got smashed on the ball throughout the evening. And Marcus Bontempelli went down with what they're calling a low-level ankle sprain, but it looks as though he'll be in doubt. 8-day turnaround ahead of their round 2 clash against Carlton.
Yeah, he'll be sore, won't he? And he went off and had it restrapped, came back on and kicked a goal, but certainly wasn't moving with the freedom that he usually would. So big blow there. Teams early on are really faced with some real challenges from a health point of view across the competition.
You mentioned that. They play Carlton next week, who will, of course, be without their coach, Michael Voss, and forward Jack Martin, who are in the AFL's health and safety protocols. But the Blues, their midfield dominated on Thursday night. They snapped this streak against the Tigers in round 1 games that goes back to 2012. And it was all about their midfielders.
Yeah, it was. And they're bigger and they're thicker than what they've had before. So I really believe to win a premiership, you need a bigger midfield because you've got to compete. That man Kennedy, his off-season must have been something out of the box, because to see his improvement across not just this game but the pre-season, the amount of ball he's winning, he averages 15 disposals through his career. So for him to go in there in big moments, have 30 plus, hit the scoreboard, was terrific and led extremely well by Patrick Cripps. I thought Cripps started a bit shaky in the game and his first 5 kicks were ineffective. But for his ability to work back into it, high metres game player, go forward, kick 3 goals, but also do what he always does, and that's win big possessions. So you add Walsh to the mix, it's a really exciting midfield for the Blues.
They won clearances 17-2
smashing
in the last quarter, which was the real defining moment of that game. What about Richmond's midfield? Because at the other end of this spectrum, they just couldn't get their hands on the ball. They lost Dion Prestia early to injury. He was subbed out of the game. This was their main ball winners.
Yeah, I'm worried about their depth, and I have been for some time. I didn't quite get the hype around Richmond in the pre-season. Many predicting them to bounce back up the ladder, but they can't because they don't have a midfield that is going to compete with the best 8 midfields in the game. You see the lack of influence there with those names. Prestia gets injured again. He's played 18 games in the last 2 years, reoccurrence of soft tissue. Trent Cotchin has been on the decline for probably 2 years now, to be fair. They have a B-plus ruckman in Nan Curvis, but he's not a Grundy, he's not a Gawn. So, look, they've got concerns all over the field, Richmond. But with the likes of Edwards at 33 and Graham is a good workhorse, but they don't have the star power that other midfields do, and I think that's going to really trouble them this year.
You mentioned the lack of depth. I wandered down to the VFL practice match earlier on Thursday. They were 100 points down to Carlton's VFL side at 3/4 time. They end up clawing it back. I think it was 80 points in the end, but that, I think, was reflective of that lack of depth. Friday night footy, Collingwood against St Kilda. We saw a brand new Magpies side under a brand new coach in Craig McRae. This was him speaking pre-game about what he wanted to see from his new Pies side.
Yeah, obviously, last year, as you know, mate, going inside 50 was 18th in the competition, so we want to improve that. And a part of that, my method or our method is to take a few more contests and maybe just go forward a little bit more. So, yeah, in the 2 games we've played so far, that's only a small sample size, we've won the inside 50 battle. We've just got to get a little bit better, bit of connection going inside 50 now. Now we've got the numbers up.
Collingwood captain Scott Pendlebury saying after the game they wanted to play a chaotic, imperfect brand, embrace the imperfections, and they did that.
I thought they had a 5-minute stretch here at the start of the 3rd quarter where their intensity really lifted and their ability to put pressure on St Kilda but also set up the ground as the way they would like to. Look here, it's not perfect. St Kilda actually win the ball back, then Collingwood get it back, and because they're set up so well, side bottom with absolute brilliance, nails that on the left foot. But I thought there was a 5-minute stretch in the 3rd quarter where it wasn't all just run and handball and free flowing. It was actually fierce pressure on the opposition, turn it over in your forward half and go back and score, which is what a new coach would have worked on all pre-season. So I was wrapped for them. They're going to take some risks and they'll get scored against off turnover. There's no doubt about that. But if you're a Collingwood fan, you're feeling a lot better about going to the footy to watch them play than you have in the last 2 years.
Father-son gun Nick Dacos making his debut. 27 touches, one more than his dad Peter on debut as well, also against the Saints. They tried to rough him up early, physically intimidate him. He didn't take a backward step though, did he?
There's no doubt about that. There was a bit of Jack Watts about this, but I love the protection that his teammates gave him. It didn't start perfect for him. You can see the turnover there and you'll see him get driven into the ground here. No doubt they came after him physically. He's not a big player, but he's up to it. Like, he's competitive, he bounces back up, he's got a bit of cheek, he's not afraid to give it back, and stuff like that. You're going to have to watch him really closely, otherwise you'll miss things like that. But he's also physical and highly competitive and composed. So they've absolutely found one. There's no surprise to anyone. We've known about him for 2 or 3 years, and those that have watched it closer have known about him for longer. So I look forward to the day he can move into the midfield and do his damage forward of centre, but it's a nice starting point across half-back for him.
Another one that draft watchers know very well is Jason Horne-Francis. He's in action tomorrow. This is the rest of the round. The number 1 pick will make his debut for the Kangaroos. They play the Hawks. The Crows take on Freo at Adelaide Oval. Really interesting encounter. And the Eagles against the Suns. I reckon this is an important game for the Suns.
I expect all those 4 sides, 6 sides bar Fremantle, to struggle this season. But it's been a brilliant round 1. Like, there's storylines everywhere. The Hawthorn North Melbourne game, no one's expecting much, but there's storylines out of it. Yep. Same with Adelaide and Fremantle. And then can West Coast pull something out of a box with 22, 23 fit players? So it's been an outstanding first round of footy, and that will continue tomorrow. Well,
speaking of one of those heartwarming moments that you spoke about, we'll get to that now. One more thing. Sam Docherty, Thursday night, hasn't played since August after undergoing 12 weeks of chemotherapy for a secondary recurrence of testicular cancer. This was one of the great moments that will endure throughout the year, I reckon.
Absolutely. That'll be one of the iconic pieces of vision all year, but it was more than that. Like, that's the moment. But he was the number 1 ranked player on the ground,
yes,
which is amazing. Like, he just fit straight back in 26, 27 possessions across half back. His work off the ball and his ability to get a hand in and to intercept, he really led from the front. It's an absolute inspiration. There's no other way to put it.
Kane, back in the swing of things?
Loved it. Look forward to doing it again next week.
We'll see you then.